Ready. Well, hello there.
Hello there, Mr. Superman, or at least that's the shirt you're wearing.
Yeah. So this is what Kara and I for Halloween. Kara went as Wonder Woman, and I went
How
as
applicable and how appropriate.
very, very applicable. And I went as morbidly obese Clark Kent. So that is
You are so not morbidly obese. You got to stop with that. You got to cut that out, man.
Dude, I got
We
more.
are not about that at all.
All right.
Not to mention, it's just not true.
Well,
but anyway, you were saying.
Yes. So superhero themes. Tal, as you know, Kara recently was diagnosed with breast cancer. So this past couple of weeks, she just had surgery a few days ago. So we've been dealing with all that. And she is an incredible trooper and a huge reminder that go get your boobies checked, go get your mammograms, follow up on that stuff. If someone tends to have dense tissue, please get a second mammogram because it's just super important. And so we were lucky. She caught it early. We did the whole double a few days ago. It's a harrowing process. It's very tough, but luckily the prognosis seems really good. So we're just knocking on wood and pushing forward. And she's truly the superhero out of this dynamic duo. So that's what's been going on my side of things.
Yeah, PJ, I thank you first of all for sharing that with the audience. Obviously, I'm well aware, and as I shared with you, I also had a very similar experience. My ex-wife, 20 years ago, when my son was 1 year old, was diagnosed with more advanced stage breast cancer. She also survived and is doing wonderfully. Hi, Maria. I will say, while without any doubt, the hero or heroine, as it will be, is Kara. There are people listening in the audience, maybe people who are the spouses of people that have that are in the process of or have undergone cancer treatments, and the reality is it's not easy to be the spouse either. So I want to, I know how much you love your wife. Oh, yeah. And you and I have been talking a lot about this because I was able to share some of my own experiences from being in your shoes, and I'm glad that I was able to be there for you. If you're in the audience and you're on, you're watching someone you love going through, as you said, a harrowing experience, it's not easy on you either. And so, PJ, take care of yourself as well. As I told you the other day when we were communicating the day of surgery, breathe and hydrate. Yeah. I don't know, our guest Edward Perotti is here with us. I don't know if he has anything to share on this particular point. Usually PJ and I start the discussion on a light note, and we try to have fun. Given that Kara just had this procedure a couple of days ago, and Edward, you were one of the guests that we actually pushed back a little bit for this interview to accommodate PJ's schedule and Kara's schedule. I want to thank you for that, for being accommodating. And if you have anything you want to share with the audience on this point, great. Otherwise, we can go to braving business. We've braved life with Kara.
I would say, honestly, you're doing absolutely everything right. I mean, I went through it myself 2.5 years ago. And you, much like I told my husband, you need to take care of yourself because I'm a pile of goo and I need you to be healthy in order to make sure that I don't collapse.
Yep.
But you're right. She's a superhero. Anybody who, I don't care. I don't want to minimalize the C word in any way, in any shape or form. It's all bad.
Yes, it is.
It is all bad. I don't care what level. And to go through it and come out the other end healthy and happy and still authentic, that's a prize you can't deny and you can't respect. So more power to her and more power to you.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, she's the one doing the hard work, right? So she was super smart in getting herself physically ready, getting herself emotionally ready. She went to a counselor, the whole 9 yards before, all this. We were able to aggressively go after this. So, my hat's off to her, and I'm always in awe of just how amazingly strong she is. And I just try to hold things together because she's my rock. And so I need her to survive and kick ass in order for me to survive and kick ass. So it's kind of how it goes.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what, jumping on what Edward just said, given I'll be turning 50 next month, And I actually think they've now moved the age that they recommend you do your first prostate exam or prostate
Test.
work, such as it is. It's a little bit more than an exam. I think it's now 45 or maybe 47, but in any event, certainly if you're 50, go do that. Take that very, very seriously. It's very, very treatable if it's caught early, and if you catch it late, not so much. And on those happy notes, PJ, why don't we introduce our audience to Edward Perotti, who's a heck of an interesting guy and has a lot to share with our audience today.
I'm thrilled. We're gonna also talk about turkeys here in a little bit, but Edward is a globally recognized multi-award-winning event designer and producer who ranks among the top event designer and producers in the world, and was recognized by Good Morning America as a celebrity party planner. He's also a sought-after public speaker, a resilience expert, and principal at EP Events and Experiences. Edward's expertise, and that's probably why he's a celebrity planner and you and I are not, is that he knows how to create unique experiences of a lifetime for his clients and guests. He has produced numerous incredibly successful events with thousands of attendees. In fact, as many as 15,000 per event, which I've attended some mega shindigs in my past.
Yeah, have you attended any MAGA events? I didn't think that was your cup of tea. I'm glad to hear it's not.
But I've attended some of these mega huge shindigs and also been through 2 personal weddings, and it's no small feat to pull off, so it's hard. Edward has received prestigious.
I just celebrated my daughter's, as you know, this past weekend.
I know, that's true.
My wonderful daughter Elaine married her amazing husband Caleb, and it was a heck of a party. But anyway, on that note, carry on.
Beautiful.
Edward, by the way, did not offer his services. I guess I must not be enough of a celebrity.
You don't phone, you don't write. How am I supposed to know these things?
I don't know. Future castigations are coming. Edward has received prestigious awards from leading trade organizations such as the Green Meetings Industry Council and Meeting Professionals International, which was recently named one of the top 25 influencers in the industry globally by Meetings and Conventions magazine.
You made it sound like Meetings Professional International was recently named, but no, it was Edward that was recently named. Just FYI for the audience.
So you know, last week I just learned how to read. So this is just give me some credit. He has
quite well given.
Thank you very much. He has been and continues to be featured in publications such as Good Housekeeping, Variety, Perfect Bride, Hollywood Life, just to name a few. Edward is not just good at what he does. He tries to do good as he goes. He takes pride in always looking for possible give back opportunities wherever his meetings or events are hosted. His personal mantra is always leave more than you take, which I actually love.
T-shirt moment. I always say that now because we are about to start our store. I know we keep saying that we're about to start our store and we haven't started our store, but there's a reason we haven't started it. It's going to be amazing when we do. It's going to be available on our website, www.bravingbusiness.com. And Edward, even though you came up with always leave more than you take, you will not get any royalties, but you may get a free T-shirt.
Well, you can put my signature on the bottom of it, so it's a quote.
I like that.
Then we'll
so long as that does not mean that you're going to ask for royalties.
I'm a cheap date. I'm a cheap date. Just don't tell anybody.
Right? This is recorded. Beyond all of that, here, Mr. Edward, this is going to be a fun conversation to learn more about. Because Edward has received personal theater training and is a big fan of horror movies, which is just in line with my beautiful wife. She and you guys can hang out and watch all that together. It'll be interesting to hear if theater training comes into play when he plans his events and whether his love of horror movies helps him anticipate potential event horrors. Edward, it is a pleasure to have you join us today on the Braving Business Podcast.
Thank you for having me. That was a mouthful.
Yeah. I'm tired. All right. I'm out. See you guys later.
All right. See you later, PJ. Thank you so much for your contribution. Edward, it's so great to meet you and have this interview with you. And I enjoyed a pre-interview as well. And I want to dive right in. You've led a very interesting life. There is this, I think, assumption that people would have that if you're in the kinds of events and production that you're involved in, there's a lot of glitz and glamour. At some point, obviously, you decided this was the kind of life and the kind of thing you wanted to do. Tell our audience what prompted you to decide that, you were cut out for creating unforgettable experiences.
Well, let's level set right now. Yes, the outward perception is just a lot of glitz and glam. Reality, not so much. I will be the first one to go back to my room and hide under the covers when the event is over, and wash off the ramblings of drip and glamour and glitz. I honestly had no idea there was an event industry. Do I say the number and really age myself? Okay, 29 years ago. I was actually working for an online publishing company, and they bought the competition in Cleveland and closed down everybody in the Bay Area. I didn't know what the heck I was going to do at that point. And I had made friends with the catering director who did my wedding not too long ago. And so I called her up. I wanted to, am I allowed to cuss? No, I'm not allowed to cuss.
Of course you are.
Okay, so I called her up to just
podcast.
kind of bitch and moan a little bit. And her response was, my catering manager just gave his notice. We should talk. Like, what do I know about food other than I know how to shove it in my mouth? And I went to talk to her, and she was like, I can teach you the food part. What I can't teach you is how to navigate people and how to get people to think beyond their own selves. She goes, and that's what you have, and that's what I need. So I took the job. I needed one, but I took the job, realized really quickly that I was not designed to get between a client and a chef or a mother and her bride. I was definitely not. I have a filter problem that I don't have one, and I don't have a poker face. And it's blatantly obvious when I just want to tell somebody to, yeah, we'll leave it there. But I loved the fact that it was, and this might kind of segues into the whole idea with theater. I was creating theater. I was taking someone's script, and it could be a wedding, it could be a corporate event, but I'm taking their script of what they want the audience to feel and hear, and designing a set around it, designing every moment that happens with that so that the people will hear what needs to be said and they'll understand it. I fell in love with it. It's as dysfunctional as it is, as exhausting as it is. And yes, there is glitz and glam and there's great travel, but it really was one of those that a light went on. I found my niche. I found what I can do. I can take my love of theater and I can apply it to a job where I potentially could make some money.
That is awesome. That's awesome. So your journey from hotel catering manager to running these multi-million-dollar event programs, I'm sure a lot of stories. Sure.
Yeah.
Is there, first of all, I got two questions. First of all, is there a pivotal moment that kind of encapsulated the essence of this whole experience that kind of melded your entrepreneurial spirit with, things that you love to do? Is there a pivotal moment that you recognize then? Also, what's the biggest one you've done?
So biggest, biggest one is probably close from a people perspective, close to 20,000. But I don't really go by the size. I go by the challenge when it comes to what's the biggest one.
That's what my wife told me once.
We're going to go to the dark side. Do not take
the ocean. But there were so many ways. Unfortunately, I don't know what it is about guys that we immediately go there.
I was going to say, yeah, do not take me to the dark side.
Yes.
The last thing you do is take a gay man to the dark side on a Friday, because I will go.
Wow.
Where I live. Fun.
I think that might be another t-shirt. I don't know. Maybe not for braving business, but
don't take me to the dark side. All right, please.
But from a size, it was more the journey of doing a private event and closing down the Louvre. For me, that to me was grand scale. The night that everybody arrived, I sat up there and I just kind of looked down, and it was, I'm here. It's like an oh my God moment that I just closed this entire facility down. These individuals are alone with Mona Lisa with a glass of champagne and just experiencing a location that they can go on holiday and see themselves, but to have it alone and then to see them tie that experience back to the business. That to me, right, at a certain size, it just becomes execution and it really becomes numbers.
Yeah.
But when you're able to make them intimate is when it truly becomes special, right? How do you make 20,000 people feel intimate? Those are the fun things. But then the moment, literally, I had the opportunity to interview at an event. They had me on stage to interview Betty Buckley. And it was about the time that she had released her album of women performing male musical leads, songs. So she was singing all the famous male songs. And we were just having a conversation. It started riffing. At a certain point, you kind of forget the audience is even out there because you're just into each other. And she looked at me and she's like, you do know that you're a producer. And I'm like,
Wow.
At that point, I'm thinking, in my head, I'm trained, I'm a planner, right? That's what I do. I anticipate whatever. And she was like, no, you're a producer. You're thinking everything before the script is even finalized. What's going to be the takeaway? What's the ROI? What's the ROO? You're a producer. And that light switch went off really hard. And I took that and ran with it.
What's interesting to me about that is an incredible anecdote, and also she's amazing. It's the fact that you heard someone that you respected recognizing something in you that perhaps subconsciously you knew to be true, but maybe because of something that you talked about in the pre-interview, which is imposter syndrome or other reasons, you found difficult to quite reach for until someone who you respected almost gave you permission to go there. And I could tell you, I've had that experience. I recall fairly early on in my career, I met a famous author, Michael Maccabee. He took a liking to me. He was in his 80s at the time. I was in my 20s. And we were having a conversation. We'd met multiple times in his office. And he said to me, at the time I was running a very small business. He said, you're destined to run very large companies. You have vision and you have courage, and you need to follow your vision, and you need to believe in yourself that even when other people may not see what you see, that there's a reason that you see what you see and other people don't. And that was that moment for me. So, I can really relate to that. And I would say to our audience in general, pay close attention. There are going to be people in your environment or people that you happen to come across who say something to you about what you are capable of that you may not quite believe yourself. And so, my question is about, imposter syndrome. And in general, we're obviously very passionate about resilience on this podcast. And I know you weathered some health issues. You talked to us about imposter syndrome. COVID kicked you in the ass. Tell our audience a little about these things and how they've shaped your perception or perspective on business and life.
Well, the imposter syndrome, I don't think ever goes away. And if anybody tells you that, I think they're full of crap.
Agreed.
I agree. I completely agree.
I think we are all innately built with insecurities. It's whether or not we know how to control them, and whether or not we know when to suppress them and when to let them out. But I mean, I'm a theater boy. I am hands down a theater boy by nature. Guess what? I'm insecure. I am more comfortable playing somebody else than I am playing me, which also then goes back to how you're raised and were your parents accepting of who you were. We can slice this onion so many different ways, and a psychiatrist could write a white paper on me and get the Nobel Prize for it. I've got more luggage than Louis Vuitton has in their stores, more baggage. But there is something that comes out of all of this that eventually you just have to look in the mirror. And I think I told you this, and it was interesting. I actually had pins made, and I do a lot of talking about it. But I had these pins and t-shirt made where it was my name. It was Edward effing Perotti. And so health-wise, I had a stroke 3 years ago, completely paralyzed, speech, nothing worked.
Oh my
Had
God.
to learn to walk, talk. You know how embarrassing it is for a male to not be able to go to the bathroom because hands didn't move. And there's a whole story behind that in my night nurse that we won't get into, because I'm painfully modest. You can use your imagination.
And also this podcast probably wouldn't quite, be the
No.
venue for that. But thank you for
Yes.
sharing us.
No problem. But when I left the ICU and I qualified to go into the physical rehabilitation center and just move in there, and they told me I was going to be in there for a couple months. I had them rearrange the furniture. Big surprise, the gay man wants to rearrange his room. But I wanted to look out of the window. What I didn't pay attention is the mirror for the room was right there. So every morning I woke up, the first thing I would see is my face, which was frightening at that point because parts of me still felt like a wax candle, right? I mean, it was not really attractive. And I started sliding down the slope of feeling sorry for myself. And it was one of those situations where I just looked in the mirror and I said that to myself and then said, sit up. Every morning, that was my routine. So I had these made, and the whole idea behind them was you need to have your own voice. You need to have your own confidence. You need to get your butt up and take things and take charge of your own self, right? You've got your army behind you. You have your team to support you, and they'll get you to the door, but you have to walk through the door alone. And so I started giving these pins out to people at industry trade shows. I'm like, if you're not comfortable enough with yourself to say those words about you in the mirror, then you say mine until you're comfortable enough to repeat it with your name in it. But you need to realize your worth. And so that's kind of how things evolved. And from the health perspective, COVID didn't hit me physically. COVID hit me financially.
Of
So
course.
the stroke went from all of that for a couple months to when they started really doing the CAT scans to look at possibilities and everything else, they find cancer. So in my throat, I had that. They couldn't do anything about it until my brain was strong enough to handle being put under for surgery and all that fun stuff. So I go through all of that. And then 3 months later, the world shuts down.
Jeez.
So it was one of those where do you curl up in a ball and you just feel sorry for yourself, right? I mean, there's a conductor who used to conduct the Boston Pops, and he would often say, you choose to spiral up or you choose to spiral down. Which one are you going to do? They both take the same amount of effort. One's easy to begin with and hard to maintain. One's hard to begin with and easy to maintain. Which one are you going to do? And I chose to spiral up. I chose to not be the one who's going to feel sorry. I'm not going to be the one who's going to, look in the mirror and say, why me? There are people with far worse going on than that. There are situations far worse than what I'm going through. So get your butt up.
That's awesome. It's very inspirational, actually.
And that's, to me, that's also how work is handled. You don't win every win. You don't, I don't hit home runs every time. There are clients who don't like me. I'm an acquired taste. I get that, right? But you don't curl up in a ball and stop.
1000%.
And it's, and what is most important to me is my home and family. So every decision is based off of them. My youngest son, who's now 27, stop and don't do the math on ages, because I do have a 30-year-old as well.
I have a 30-year-old, well, almost 29.
Well, it's kind of one of those where, oh yeah, and you went to a private Catholic school. We get the age thing now. No, it's not that situation. But he mentally is forever 14. And so one of the big driving forces was, if something happens to me, he needs to be financially covered, have everything in place, and be self-sufficient. So every business decision I make goes back to the house. What's going to cover this?
Yep.
And then enjoy the work. Have fun, right? I mean, hate to say it, but and it's kind of apropos, we're not curing cancer in this industry.
Right.
Right. We're creating memories. We're creating moments. We're making people. You don't do an event for negative reasons. There's
Right.
no event built around negativity. It's all positive. So the experience of building and designing should be positive.
I think it's awesome, because you're actually giving a gift, right? You're giving a lasting memory of a positive, hopefully as much as possible, positive lasting memory to someone. I think that's awesome. That's a great feel good type of industry to be in, which is wonderful. That's
But
great.
I tell you, I wouldn't normally be as quiet as I was for as long as I was there. But as I was listening to you, I thought, man, that's one golden nugget after another that you shared with our audience. And they stood on their own. They didn't need reinforcement. Ultimately, here's what I heard. Here's what I heard, Edward, and tell me whether this resonates for you. All of us will face moments in our lives that will represent a fork in the road, where we could choose to take one approach and go down one path, or choose another and go down another. And what separates successful people from people who are less successful, and happy people from people who are less happy, is that successful, happy people go for it. They lean into the moment. They don't allow the setbacks to defeat them. How does that resonate for you? How does that, how does that land for you?
100%. I mean, I have one chance. I have one chance at this life. And the interesting thing is, before the stroke, I'm not entirely sure where my head would have been with this. Maybe a little the same, but I'll throw the imposter syndrome in there and kind of, push that around. But after coming out of it the other end, I mean, there are still residual effects. Like Ed and stairs are challenging. Certain words, I've lost my language skills. I can still understand my French and Italian, but the pushing it out of my mouth is gone. Right. So, I mean, there's little things that have happened, which you can navigate. But at the end of the day, I still feel like you tried twice and I beat you twice. What else do you got for me? And I'm not stopping.
Love that.
And it once again, spiral up or spiral down. Pick one, but then whatever you pick, own it. If you're going to spiral down, do it in the most spectacular way, and don't take anybody with you. But if you're going to spiral down, go down in flames and go down big.
Well, I'll tell you what, hey, we're going to hit the brakes real hard on that, because what I'm going to advocate for is, if you're at that crossroads, pull yourself up.
Yes.
Don't go down any path that has a greater probability of you being sad, miserable, defeated, regretful.
Well, and it takes
those
more
are the
work.
Emotions you want to avoid. You want to avoid those emotions of the only if, or what if, or I should have. PJ, I've said this before in an episode. People should all over each other and should all over themselves. Okay, with shoulds. Okay. Leave the should, and I don't, it's not, in all candor, it's not my word. It's a person that was in my life that used it often. And I thought it was a very clever way to point out that you either do or don't. Okay. And you own that. You own that.
Yeah. It's well, and the spiraling down seriously takes much more effort, because you're also sucking the air out of rooms and life out of the people who are there to support you. And there's so much more work in the negativity side than on the positive side. And so, like I said, which one do you want to put the effort into? And there's no positive outcome when you're negative. There's no positive outcome. You lose friends, you lose business, right? I mean, you lose yourself.
Sure.
In all of it. And it's so conscious decision. Pick yourself up, dust it off. Like I like to say, readjust the crown and get back out there.
Man,
There's a lot. I think Spiral Up would be a great t-shirt, personally.
It would be. Yeah. Absolutely. With a little Edward Perotti underneath it.
There we go.
No royalties.
But no
fantastic. I love that.
You're tying my hands here.
Look, so in regards, first of all, thank you for all of that. That was like one of the most inspirational and pumped up little segments that we've had in many of our shows. So that was,
and that says a lot. I mean, again,
it does say a lot.
We've had unbelievable guests. We are incredibly grateful to be a top 0.5% global podcast in popularity out of 3.2 million podcasts. We're deeply honored by that, and we think a lot of that has to do with the quality of our guests.
Yeah,
and I got to say, that may have been the highlight of the season for me. I mean, that entire stretch of, I'm going to go back and listen to that myself because it was just uplifting. I mean, that's what that was. And, we all have those moments. We've had them in, our last episode of the season. This will be the second to last. The one to follow it will be the interview I did with PJ. PJ's interview of me was episode 1. My interview of PJ is the last episode of season 1. And there are a lot of moments in that episode where PJ frigging lifted himself up by his nose hairs. And there are lots of those to get up from some serious setbacks. And you know what? We've heard this theme, but I don't know that we called it out quite this clearly.
Yeah.
As Edward just did. And
very
kudos
succinct.
to you. Yeah.
That was wonderful. In regards to, so, no one starts, you kept saying, or you didn't keep saying, but you mentioned that everything's all of your attention and your intention is about what's at home, right? And about making sure that that's covered, which I think is, of course, brilliant. I think we all do that. You said it, which is wonderful. I also don't think that anyone starts a business to be mediocre, right? I think that everyone wants to try to scale and grow as much as they can, especially if they feel like they have a lot of passion for what they're doing and they're on the right path and they think that it resonates with their customers and all that. So, but scaling involves horrors of certain magnitude. As you are a fan of horror movies, this is a segue. As you're a fan,
very good at those things, PJ. He's clever like that.
I'm well greased. Do you find parallels between anticipating these pitfalls for events? Because I know for a fact you can plan everything to the nth degree and something's going to go wrong.
It always does.
It always does. So do you find parallels between anticipating event pitfalls and predicting plot twists in a thriller?
It's really, really difficult to get me to be surprised on either side.
All right.
My husband hates watching thrillers or horror movies with me. There are some where I will write the outcome on a slip of paper 10 minutes into the movie, fold it, put it on the coffee table. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "This is who did it," or "This is what's going to happen." And he's like, "How do you do that?" I'm like, it's called playing chess. It's same with events, navigating C-suites, navigating an industry. It's all about playing chess. You watch where the pawns are going. I kind of did you watch Queen's Gambit?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What a great show.
First of all, I have a secret celebrity crush on Anna. She doesn't know this. I'm not stalking her, but she's going to be my best friend one of these days. But when the character would step back and look up and see the board moving,
yep,
that's how my brain works. when I need to sell something or sell an idea or pitch, whatever the situation is, I think of the entire situation as moving the pawns around, listening to the conversations. When do I move this? And then reminding myself constantly at the end that the pawn can win the game. The pawn can still take the queen out. And that for me is just kind of, same with a horror movie. You know that somebody is always going to get out of the car and walk by themselves down a dark alley and they're going to die. So you don't even get into the car.
Yeah.
Right? You start looking at those, certain characters by the way they write and film, that when a character has a little bit more airtime or screen time than they had through the whole rest of the show, they're up next because they're trying to make a emotional connection with an audience so that when they kill them, everybody feels sorry or sad. So it's knowing that everything is different, but it's the same.
Right.
Every situation, I don't care if it's 20,000 people or 20 people for an event, the pieces of the puzzle are identical. It's just whether or not they're scaled properly. And it's understanding when do those pieces go down? How do you navigate? And then also, how do you articulate it? Right? There is a whole sell versus tell conversation that needs to go around. And ultimately it goes back to you. It's your IP, it's your soul. It's, like I said, there's people who aren't fans of me, and I don't have a problem with that at all. It is, just like horror movies. There's horror movies. I've gotten so into the Korean horror movies. They're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant because they throw me off. They twist it and they throw me off to where I want more and more because they're creative in their thinking. That's what I want my events to be. I want the audience to be thrown off. I want them to walk into a room and kind of do a little bit of a clutch the pearl moment, right? With a little inhale, and then turn around, and that experience ties back to the host or hostess or the company in some positive way. And so that's where the horror kind of plays into it. Is you could either go down the same, once again, the paths, go down the same path and template of what it is, and you're just going to add a body count and more blood, and from an event perspective, you just keep throwing more money at it, or you find creative ways to throw the audience off their game.
And that makes it memorable.
It makes it memorable.
That's awesome. Side note, I'm going to watch horror movies with your husband, and you can watch them with my wife because she is a prolific author, and she always knows what's going to happen in these friggin' movies. And I sympathize with your husband.
Well, he doesn't really watch them anymore. I'll look across and he'll be sound asleep with the dog on his lap on the other end of the sofa. So it is kind of one of those where it's like, okay, go to bed. No, I'm watching.
I got to say two things. One about horror movies, which I do not like, is that I did learn at some point that if you just turn off the sound, it's not nearly as scary. So kudos to the people that make the soundtrack on a lot of these movies. That is actually what frays the nerves more so than the images. The second thing is, as you know, PJ, I'm in a new relationship with my lovely girlfriend Erin, and we're watching shows together, and I've come to see that Erin asks a lot of questions when she watches shows, and she's very engaged. It's kind of amusing. I'm more accustomed to just watching the show and letting things unfold, and it's very interactive with her. So which I think is charming.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Let's talk about authentic voice. One of the interesting observations, that I took from our pre-interview was that you talked about how important it was for you to find your authentic voice, how crucial you felt it was. And I have two questions for you. First, when did you recognize you didn't have it, right? Because in order to get there, it means that at some point you realize, well, I'm not quite being who I want to be. And I certainly have had that experience. And I'm curious, when both age-wise and maybe point in your career, did you find that, you're comfortable being you? And like you said, some people may not like that, but tough for them. you're going to be your authentic self, and so be it. Tell us about that. Tell us about that. Tell us about when you realized it, and also kind of where it took you.
Okay, this is not going to be a popular response. You're gonna hear about this. I have never, well, I shouldn't say never.
Just for the record, you can write to us at www.bravingbusiness.com, as many of you have already discovered. Go ahead, Edward.
I had never been comfortable in my skin. My entire childhood, growing up, insecure like you wouldn't believe, voices coming at my head, you know, in regards to how do I look, right? So, I mean, I grew up in the 70s and 80s where it was that transition time with a lot of people and a lot of self-identifying and all. I had no idea. I mean, my grandfather used to joke with me that there were times where I didn't know if I was going to wind my ass or scratch my watch. And and it affected so much of me. So that, I mean, so I was married for 10 years to a woman. Had two boys, and was dealing with a lot of my own issues, obviously, and was very mindful of not killing anybody off when I finally came to the realization that I'm not straight. And navigating that. But even at that point, when that all came out, I still was in my skin. And there was a situation in a work environment where I went out to grab some food, and I had forgotten my name badge. So security, of course, wasn't going to let me in, even though how do you not know who I am? But I finally got back to my office, and somebody had written the word fag on my whiteboard and on my name badge. And of course, I took it to HR and the whole thing because it's uncomfortable. But that was the moment, because I didn't let a lot of people in because I didn't know what they would see, because I didn't know what I was seeing. And at that point, I'm like, what the hell? I don't care anymore. I really don't care. It's what I am and who I am are two different things. They enhance each other. But you're not going to see a P flag on my tombstone. Hopefully you're going to see loving father, husband, good human being, left a mark on the world. But you're not going to see a P flag. You're not going to see a disco ball built into the headstone, right? You're not going to see any of that. So it was really coming to terms with what I am and who I am, and stop hiding it. And the interesting is, I've had producers tell me, you're not gay enough. And then I've had some tell me you're too gay. And I'm like, I'm 6'4". I'm built like a quarterback. I just happen to be able to make things look spectacular. But I am not this 5'9", emaciated, tight suit fitting with a bow tie, fabulous over the top event planner that most of the world has that impression. So it was like, I'm going to be myself. I don't care. Like it, buy it, don't buy it. And it just, that's kind of where it came from. It came from a negative place. But once again, spiral up or spiral down.
Yep. Unapologetically you.
Yes.
As you were speaking, I was thinking about a blog post I read last week, and I scrolled and found it. It was by a man named Avi Lewis, who writes for the Times of Israel. And as PJ knows, and we actually did a special episode, which I want to thank the audience for the incredible reaction to it. We've had thousands and thousands of views of this episode on YouTube, and lots of listeners and lots of comments. And so I appreciate that. But Avi's post, which was actually in the Times of Israel, so you can find it at timesofisrael.com, was actually called "Dear World, I Don't Care." And it was about, how he, and frankly me, and a lot of other people who are Jews and lovers of Israel, felt like we could not quite be authentically ourselves For any number of reasons. He did a much better job than I ever could, and I would urge people to go read it if they're interested in the topic. And I also, as you know, I'll be 50 years old this year. In fact, in a month, December 17th, PJ, I'm looking forward to the great gift I know you're going to get me. And you as well, Edward.
Welcome
as well.
to the party, pal.
Okay.
I'll sign the release for using my quotes. There's your birthday present.
Gosh, no, see, look at that. That's how you turn. That's, you know what? Can I tell you something about that? My birthday's December 17th, which happens to almost always fall on the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, which, you know, Jewish children get gifts on Hanukkah. And in my case, my parents always combined it. Oh, it's Hanukkah, it's your birthday. May as well, one nice gift. You know, that's kind of what you did there. We already had that. You already gave us that. Anyway, you know, I'll just go quickly. I don't want to make it about me or about Israel, but I would say that I have often felt inclined to lean into how much I feel, and I do feel, absolutely feel, I see the point of view of the other side, and I have accepted that our point of view is not seen by many. And there's a sentence that's been uttered, and it's, you know, the New York Times actually wrote an article about it just yesterday, you know, from the river to the sea. I won't get into that. I could just say how offensive that statement is to me, and how in the past when I'd hear it, I wouldn't address just how offensive it was. And I am going to be my authentic self, and I will not let people get away with a statement like that ever again. And, you know, that's kind of liberating. So, you know, I guess, Edward, you liberated. I mean, someone in an act that is despicable, freed you to be you.
Yes.
So his intent was to knock you down. What he actually did was raise
Created
you
the
up.
beast. Created the beast. And I love the parallel. Thank you for that. Because there comes a point to where at the end of the day, I get up every morning and I have to look at my own reflection. I don't want to have an ounce of regret of anything that I did or said. That wasn't me. And if it's bad, I'll own it. If it's good, I'll own it.
Yeah.
But it's me. And once again, if you don't like it, don't buy it.
Yeah.
Step away.
I will say this, and I wonder, I'd love your perspective on this. That statement can go two ways, right? So there's some people would say, look, if you don't like me, like you said, don't buy it. But they use that to offend. They basically give themselves permission to be assholes.
Yes.
And I'm not sensing that that's what you're saying. I'm not sensing that this is you saying, look, I'm going to be me. If I'm offending you and I'm an asshole, tough, deal with it. I'm not actually hearing that. And I want to make that distinction for the audience, because we're not advocating for, you know, brideless self-expression, you know, at the expense of being a kind, generous human being. At least I'm not. How about you?
You're correct. And it does, I get how that could read that way, but it is something that we all have to live with the consequences of what we do and what we say. I choose to not feel, it's kind of hard to pull the right word. But I choose to not fall into anyone's bucket and perceived notion of who and what I am. I am always respectful. I may disagree when it comes to politics, right and left with people, but I'll hear them out. But I will expect them to hear me out. Right? So I am when it comes to that and my voice, I am not going to berate anybody. I am not going to step on them. Hopefully, I'm going to enlighten them so they understand where I'm coming from, but I'm not going to shy away from the conversation. And that's more of where it's coming from. It's not the I'm going to be an asshole and say what I want to say just because I also want to be provocative and get your attention.
Yeah.
No, this is what you're saying makes me feel. And if it's wrong, correct me. And if it's right, own what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
As it's not hard to be a human being. It really isn't. It's not hard to use the peripheral vision that genetics gives us to see all the people that are walking next to you on the street, or the person behind you as you walk in a store or a restaurant and hold the door.
Yep.
Right? I mean, it's just acknowledging human beings, as flawed as we all are, as mouthy and entitled as we all are. We're still all here for a reason. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to get into all of that because I don't have the answers. But I also know that my neighbor believes XYZ. Do we still have spirited conversations? Absolutely. Do we still exchange, lawnmowers and all those other funny, crazy things? Absolutely. Do we feed the turkeys on the street? Yes, we do. But it doesn't, but speaking your mind in your authentic voice isn't always a bad thing, as long as it's coming from a place of good.
Right. And that was really, I had no doubt that was where you were with it. And I felt that it would be worthwhile to call that out, because I think some people could take that down the wrong path.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Sure, and really the jerk off who kind of gave you the foundation to leap off for your own self-perception by cowardly writing a word on your pass and everything when you weren't around. He kind of gave you a gift, but and I mentioned it was cowardly because he wouldn't say that to your face.
No.
Right? Because you know what a 6'4" gay man is? A man.
Yep.
6'4".
Exactly, right? He's a tall dude. So good for you for taking what some people can allow others to spiral them down, right? To give them that shove off the ledge and actually make it your first rung of ascension. So that's
and I talk a lot about on this podcast and in general about all three of my children, who I'm very proud of. As I said, I married my middle daughter Eleni this weekend. My oldest daughter Sophia, who's 29, and her wife Maddie are both very courageous women. And I have thought about the fact that being born when they were gave them an incredible privilege, in a way that the degree of hostility against the community, at least, while I don't think it's completely eradicated, although amazingly in a very short amount of time more Americans support gay marriage, and I think that we're at a point in life where people finally recognize that love is love, for heaven's sake. But they didn't have to have the struggle, I think, Edward, that you may have had to have,
or Gen
where
X.
they could not identify themselves as they were. I'll give you a crazy story, not 100% the same, but similar in a sense, which is that my ex-wife converted to Judaism. She didn't do it for me, by the way. She converted before she ever met me. And she came from a Catholic family, and her elderly grandmother could never know that she was a Jew. I'm glad that we are moving in a direction. And one of the reasons that, that famous adage that the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice is so true. And I want to believe that isn't just by chance. It's because people choose to raise their voice on behalf of causes and things that are just. And God knows the world is a definite 2 steps forward, 1 step back world we live in still. But it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, in my opinion.
No,
at least in the long term.
I totally agree with you on that one. It was interesting when I came out to my mother. The first words she said to me were, "You can tell me and talk to me about anything. Just don't tell me you're gay."
No.
Which, of course, you know where that conversation went. Stopped. Bottle of wine.
Just for you, a bottle of wine and a straw.
In the car, just
wow.
See you next week, Mom. But yeah, I mean, gay, straight, black, white, I don't, I care, but I care more that they're growing up in a world where they can express themselves, where they can be themselves. You know, it is that there is fear all over the place and there is hate all over the place. And I mean, I deal with it with the groups, with going to different countries. You know, people like, well, you know, I'm a little nervous about going here. What happens? My response is, I can't even go to a Walmart in Kansas City without fear of being shot. So either you're going to stay in your house for the rest of your life or you're going to live your life.
Yep.
Right? It's you just got to get up. You got to get up. And this generation coming up is growing up in a world where they can express themselves. Sometimes it's a little too much, but that's the old school coming out.
It is a fine line, and you know what? It kind of goes with the territory. You're going to, I think, almost always, whenever there's correction, there are some people that will overcorrect.
Well, but it is easier to pull things back than to push things forward. So I don't have a problem with extreme, because then we can educate them on other things, right? But we don't know where they stand and we don't know where they believe unless they go out there and do it.
I want to hope you're right. I mean, we've had conversations on this podcast. We had a human intelligence expert, Buddy Jericho, and he and I had a long conversation about artificial intelligence and the impact that may have on just how much we can pull it back. And I think it remains to be seen. But I do think ultimately, I mean, I'm an optimist, and the reason I'm an optimist is because I think in general, most people want to do the right thing and want to be good and want to treat others with respect and kindness. Not all, certainly not all. I mean, all of our lives are going to be people that, frankly, and unfortunately, will say what your mom said, right? And I have not talked much about my own relationship with my mother, which is unfortunately there isn't one. But you know, there are people in your life who will unfortunately not be willing to see you at your best, regardless of who you are or what you do. And I mean, I think this is another example of don't let someone pull you down. And you know, I think that the message here from you and in general, you know, authenticity by definition will offend some people. So long as your intent is not to be offensive, and I don't, you know, by the way, if it's offensive to someone that you're gay, then fuck them, you know, pardon my French. Okay. But that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about in terms of being yourself. And if some people don't like who you are, that's on them. That's not on you. So long as your intent is not to poke a finger in their eye and offend for the sake of offending.
Right.
We're coming around the bend, and I want to, you know, talk about a couple of things that we haven't had a chance to talk about that I think are interesting. I want to talk about legacy, and you know, you've done some really cool events, and one of the things that, you know, stand you out, and you said it a little bit on this in this interview, but really that's out there about you. I mean, the Good Morning America article that I read that talked about, you know, where you gave advice, by the way, about how to throw a hell of a Halloween bash. Good for you. Was very complimentary of the kinds of events you throw, and I mean, you really dazzle and you leave an impression. Talk about that. I mean, what is it about leaving an impression that is so, I don't know, that obviously drives you? Because look, you could phone it in. You could do an amazing event, and it will be just like any other amazing events. I've been to many events. PJ and I have both been to numerous conferences, and they all blend together. But then there are some that don't.
Yep. So true.
What is it that prompts you to be the guy that throws the events that don't blend it?
Well, the first thing that, if I were to say the first word that comes out of my head is negative, but I'm going to say it: ego. I am very mindful. I mean, you'll see it in socials. You'll see it I don't really drop names. I don't believe in coattails. I don't want anybody hiring me because I did so-and-so's wedding, or because I did so-and-so's product launch or movie release or any of that. I don't want to work with those people. I want to work with the people who look at the work and understand the value and want to have some fun. So just kind of that's when the ego kicks in, that's kind of a personal mantra. I always joke around that I'm like, so I'm such a certain size in my industry, but nobody knows it, right? Because I don't blast it. I'm very, very mindful of that. But the other part of it is I've never, and this goes back to my grandparents. I don't like status quo. I don't like the idea of somebody saying we want to do X, Y, and Z, and I have a file cabinet. I pull out number 10 and tell the team, here you go, execute this for so and so. I want to know the culture of the organization. I want to know the words that they want to convey. I want to know if it's a couple, I want to know about them. I want to know these things because I want to build the event around that. It's not just throwing a party or throwing a conference for sake. It's about getting people to connect to the soul of the org, to the message that they're conveying, and that becomes unique experiences because they're all different. Every culture is different. Everybody has different words that inspire them. Everybody has different visions. So why would I give you a phoned in event versus something more bespoke?
Yeah. Oh, makes perfect sense.
PJ made bespoke jeans for many years. I mean, it's
I
it's
did.
kind of the same, right?
Yeah. His is I think a lot more not flamboyant, but just like, well, actually it is more flamboyant and bigger and probably a lot more satisfying than making some jeans. But that's I totally,
I don't know if I could get into my size 34,
really...
I'd be a happy man, and that would be more than anything.
Dude, I can make you any size jeans you want. I could put a 34 on there. Would that help you?
Yeah, put that 34 on that number that I don't want to say. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And then you can show your husband and anyone else, look, I'm a 34.
Yeah, he would say I'm full of crap. So don't.
That's awesome. Well, look, first of all, thank you for all of your amazingly inspirational words and thoughts and experiences. I mean, this has been a fantastic chat. I've really, truly enjoyed it. So thank you for that. I think that one of the things that we try to get out of this, outside of great quips for t-shirts, are learning what people's mantras are that keep people going. So yours is you touched on it earlier, you alluded to it. It's very empowering. It's a little profane.
That's one way to look at it.
Yeah. But nice. It's also, I love profanity. And not to correct you, Tal, but you said, pardon my French. I don't know if the genus of the word fuck is French, but that's for another time.
I would love to know what the origin of that word is.
Well,
that's a different episode.
Can you tell or share with the audience what your personal mantra is, and give any advice, because you've got loads of it. Give any of your excellent advice on how they might curate their own mantra.
So the profane part, I think hopefully people now understand the Edward effing Perotti, and that it's not an ego driven. It's a get your ass up out of bed, start your day, and face everything mantra, right? But truly, I mean, there is, regardless of what we do, never forget that, these are moments that matter, and your life should be all about an experience. And if you're not living that, you're not living. So, embrace every experience, positive or negative, embrace it. Because the odds are that it's going to happen again are few and far between, right? Even the negative ones. You're going to learn how to not go down the path again, but that should help you never have it happen again, right? Yeah. There's a positive spin to every negative, and there's a positive way to look at it. And every experience changes who you are. You may not recognize it, but every experience changes who you are. I mean, sitting here talking to you two, I feel a heck of a lot more comfortable talking about just myself and just the authenticity of what I do, right? I mean, there are positive outcomes on everything. So own them and embrace them and love them.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's great advice, and I agree with it. And I'm thinking about a guest earlier this season, Pete Moore's, whose mantra was you either win or you learn, right? So lean in, right? And that's definitely one way to look at it. And we've all been through difficult moments. I talked about mine in my episode. PJ talks about his in the episode that will close season 1 in a few weeks. And at the moment, by the way, let's be really honest about it. When you're going through a rough time, it's not so easy to believe it.
Correct.
Or certainly not easy to see it, not even so easy to believe it. However, I'll tell you, I went through a very rough period of time, several months after a tough breakup I didn't expect. And what I told myself over and over during that time was something I knew to be true, even though I didn't feel it at the time, which is things will be okay. I will be okay. I always am okay. It's going to take some time and it's going to hurt. But at the end, on the other side of that, is going to be a wiser me, a me that has a better appreciation and understanding of certain things that maybe I didn't appreciate or understand before. And I'm going to be better for it. And I think, the fact that this entire season has been continuously, and listen, it's not a coincidence. Braving Business is a podcast that's about resilience and perseverance. And inherently, resilience and perseverance means you're going through something or have gone through something. Yep. And have either managed to show up, managed to get through and get to the other side, or have the confidence that you will if you're going through it right now. And I think what we heard from you today, Edward, in virtually every story in this interview, except maybe the part about the 34 genes, is that you should embrace who you are and be proud of who you are and accept that who you are, the authentic version of you, if you're well-intended, if you're a generous, kind person, and most of us are, is exactly who you should be. And as you get better and grow more, that authentic version of you, it's not that you weren't authentic before, is that you have a new perspective on your own authenticity. And that's all. No reason. I had moments, even recently, where I looked back at some of what I did when I was in my 20s or 30s and 40s with shame, and I talked in my episode about how I don't think regrets all that useful an emotion. By the way, I got a lot of hate mail on that because apparently there are a lot of people that feel regret is very motivating. And there's apparently a best-selling book about that. And I appreciate that.
So real quick on that one.
Yeah.
My aunt had passed away about 5 years ago. And at the service, my father, my father was a great provider. I'm not dissing that. He just never learned how to provide himself. Right. So we're not that close. He came up to me when we were alone and said that he needed to talk to me. And of course, the smart ass in me first said, what are you dying? And he was like, no, I need to apologize. I'm like, apologize for what? And he just rattled off all these things from my childhood. And what was interesting was when he was done, I looked at him. I don't know where this guy came from, but I looked at him and I'm like, I don't know if you need to apologize, because I spent my entire life trying to get your attention. And had I not done that, I don't think I would be right here right now. So I'm not entirely sure that it's something you need to apologize for to me, maybe to yourself. But because I wanted your attention, I trained myself to push myself further and further.
Edward, I got to push back. Not obviously, I get what you're saying, but why can't it be both? Why can't, nothing will take away how you push yourself and why you push yourself. That is the past, it's history, it happened. But what's the harm of someone recognizing that they did you wrong? And
I took it. I took the apology. Oh, are you kidding? Because I knew it would never come again. But I gladly took it. But I also didn't want him, nor did I believe that he needed to carry a burden around anymore, because the success that has come out of the negative far outweighs the negative. I don't hold a grudge. I don't hold anything against it. And it's the mindset.
Would that have been your perspective even had he not apologized?
Yes.
Would you have? Yeah. Well, good for you. You're a better person than me. I'll be honest. My issue with my mother is that I believe she's done things that have caused me a lot of pain, and she would not own up to it. And when I told her what my version of it was, she denied that was the truth, or at least my truth. And I found that offensive and upsetting. And I think, for a lot of people, there's no question that what shaped us into being who we are, especially if we feel fairly proud or even very proud of who we've become, that the crucible we went through is part of the story. And we wouldn't be who we are if not for that crucible. And for that, and with that, I completely agree. And I think that if you've done someone wrong, you should own up to it. If someone's done you wrong, they should own up to it.
Yes.
And you know what? I don't see those two things as mutually exclusive or not being, not fitting well together. I think they do. And I'm not saying you're saying they're not, they don't. I guess I would have said to, if my mother had come to me, or maybe does one day, she's still alive, and says, you know what, I didn't see it before, but I didn't do it intentionally. Here, I do hear you. And I recognize that was your experience, and I'm sorry about that. That would go a long way. That would go a long way for me. And I bet I'm not alone in that.
Well, so I will say on that note, you're the bigger man than I am, because if that situation, I think we're separated at birth.
You're 6'4", I'm 5'10". I mean, it's not even close. You're the big
okay.
man.
So I took the height in the womb. You got other things.
Yeah.
I would probably have my mother, if my mother were to do that, I don't think I would be as gracious, because for me, they're like what my father was, what my mother were, two different scenarios. One was kind of neglectful, but still present. The other was just vicious and nasty. So, I'm not going to say I'm a bigger person for it. Oh no, kitten with claws would come out and purge. But you said something before you wrapped that kind of hit me as you were talking about your other speakers and some of the books. What I found with so many is people tend to connect with the stories that feel closest to them and try to emulate that. And my comment would be that they need to find what works for them and how they navigate anything when it comes to resilience or whatever. For me, I found that humor got me through everything. Finding the humor, regardless if it was inappropriate humor, because there was a lot of it, but finding the humor was more authentic to me and how I navigated everything. So find what actually, glean from all these people and glean from all the ideas, but ultimately find what's going to work for your authentic self. And if that means curling up in a ball and crying for a day, fine, as long as you get up and you move forward and all of that. But much like events, everything is different and unique in a situation. So take the advice and understand it, but don't drop your anchor on someone else's. Find your own truth.
Yeah. And also find the acceptance, right? You gotta learn to accept. I know we're coming up to the end. I just wanted to say, I'm quarter Chinese, so I'll give you an old Confucius saying that I think provides a lot of wisdom. I find that if you're in a sour situation like us finding out about cancer, or you having unfortunately that stroke and everything else that happened to you, and Tal with your relationships, all of that, we're all faced with negative things. Confucius said, well, that's a shit sandwich no one ordered, right? So just acknowledge that, accept it, like, hey, this is not what I wanted. This isn't how I perceived this moment to be, but accept it and move on and build upon that and just go on.
We were in church, I'd have my hand raised saying amen.
Well, before I close, I do want to thank the, 20 or so listeners or viewers that sent me the book, The Power of Regret by Daniel H. Pink. I will say that I have not yet read it, but I appreciate that many of you felt very strongly that I got the fact that I said I don't believe in regret wrong. I respect that. I still feel that way. Even if I read the book, I suspect that I will still feel pretty strongly that regret generally speaking, is not the most useful emotion, but we can agree to disagree. I want to thank our amazing guest, Edward Perotti, who is an incredible human being first and foremost, but also a multi-award-winning event designer and producer. He has thrown some of the some great events that have impacted people's lives and been memorable. Good Morning America called him a celebrity party planner, even though he didn't plan my daughter's wedding. But you know what? I still have a son to marry. He's only 21, so be a minute. But I think I'll call on you then. I think I'll want to know just how, especially given that it's my son, and I'm very hopeful he marries someone whose parents believe in the tradition of the bride's parents paying for the wedding. In which case, Edward, the budget is no factor at all, right? Just make sure that we throw an event that no one ever forgets. Can you commit to that? I mean, that's all I'm asking.
I can commit to that. I mean, if I can do events for audiences in India and in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, I think I can handle yours.
All right.
Well,
also,
yeah.
I think Tal and I should be invited to one of these.
I agree. Yeah, especially well, I don't know that I'm allowed in Abu Dhabi. Well, I guess so. I'm an American citizen too.
Yeah.
Although my passport says I was born in Israel, so I don't know. Am I allowed in Abu Dhabi? Is that part of the United Arab Emirates? Because there is peace. Okay, great. So I'm allowed.
And you know what's really funny is, even as a gay man, I feel more safe and secure walking in Abu Dhabi and Dubai than you could possibly imagine. Wow. It is
really interesting.
That's a whole nother conversation, but how they view brotherly relationships, nobody would think twice if I had my arm around my husband.
Right.
Because they wouldn't ask orientation. They would assume we're friends. Couldn't do it with a woman.
Very interesting.
But it's how they view tolerance is huge.
Well, is it tolerance, or is it just looking the other way? I don't know. It is entirely a different conversation, which I would love to have, Edward. We'd love to have you back.
We should probably have you on again.
Yes, I think that
anytime you guys call, I am yours. This is fun.
Yeah, that's great.
Fantastic. Edward, thank you so much for your time. To our listeners and viewers, keep braving life, keep braving business. And as we always say, if you like the episode, please like it. Please follow us wherever you stream. We are very grateful for the hundreds of you, closing in on 1,000 that have liked the podcast on Apple Podcast. We are very grateful for the many people that are listening and watching. And I would be remiss if I didn't end where we started. PJ, I feel such love for you and for Kara, and you are always in my thoughts, and now more than ever. I have such high confidence that you will see it through, and that we will have many more years to celebrate our friendship and your love with your wife. So I want to end with that.
Friend. Thank you so much. All right.